Hello, everyone. I have a question for you before we start. Let's say you were in a car taking a road trip at night with a complete stranger, and then you come to the realization that this person driving the car might be a serial killer. Could you survive the night? It's a good thing I asked that question because that's actually the name of the book. So let's get into it right now. So, Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Wow. This is a twisty, turny tale. He took a simple concept that would have made for a good book anyway, but he put more twists in there than a head of braided hair. And it was really a joy to read, and one of those books that you have to know what happens next. You can't just stop at that chapter, no, because there's a cliffhanger. You have to find out what happens. It starts out with a girl named Charlie. Now, she's a young lady. She's attending college, but she's kind of had a rough go of it lately. Both her parents died in a car accident, so she's scared of driving. Her roommate and best friend at the college was unfortunately murdered by a serial killer that's known as the campus killer. And on that particular night that her friend Maddie was killed by this campus killer, they were at the bar together. They had an argument, and Charlie had left in a huff, angry, and left her friend Maddie alone at the bar on the night that she was murdered. So she feels really guilty because she loved Maddie. She wishes she hadn't said those mean things to her at the bar. She's sad. She's guilt-ridden. On top of that, like I said, her parents had died, so her life's kind of unraveling at this point. She does have a boyfriend, but again, because of her mental state, she thinks he's going to break up with her, and maybe it's best if she does the breaking up first. She also has a mental illness, which she quit taking her pills for. She suffers from hallucinations, very realistic hallucinations. Now, Charlie is a bit of a movie addict, mainly old classics from the 40s and 50s, and she'll see things in her mind and talk to people that only she can hear, and she'll be in situations that only she's actually in. However, when they're happening, when these hallucinations, or as she calls them, movies in her mind, are actually happening, she has no idea what's real and what's not. So she's always in a constant state of doubt on whether things that have happened actually happened, or was that just one of her movies that her mind's bringing back to her in the form of a memory. And that's the catalyst for this story, because she decides to leave school. She doesn't want to do it anymore. She needs to get her life together. She's going to go visit her grandmother in another state. So she goes to the local college's rideshare board and decides to put up an ad saying where she wants to go. There she meets a big, handsome dude named Josh, who, in fact, is going almost the exact same place that she is and would be more than willing to give her a ride. He can only do it at night because he has some things to finish up. He works at the college, he says, and he has to finish up some loose ends, and then they can take off. She doesn't want to spend another day there, another 3 days, another week, like her boyfriend's pleading with her to do. She just wants to get out of there. Her life is unraveling. She thinks going home, visiting her grandmother, will help her get her life back together. So she's waiting outside. Josh pulls up, right, in his car. Nothing looks suspicious, no big red flags. She decides to get in, and out they go on a little 6-hour night journey home. But of course, if it ended there, that wouldn't really be a horror story, and it wouldn't really be that interesting. The concept itself would be good enough. But what happens next is, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but you'll like it. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of the twists and the turns and things you think you know being pulled away from you, you're going to like this book. Because it soon becomes apparent as they're driving that Josh is lying to her about several things. she questions him about some things. She finds out some things, and she's like, okay, he's lying, and he's probably lying for a reason. And of course, her mind keeps going back to the campus killer and the night her friend died. And Josh says something along the lines of, well, after she tells him, they have a conversation about some things. He says, well, how do you know the killer's not still out there and actually targeting you? Now, of course, that's going to bring all kinds of ring all kinds of bells in your head. Somebody says something like that. But he seems like a nice guy. They seem to actually get along. And like I said, Maddie don't know if some of the things they're talking about are things that she just experienced in one of her hallucinations, or if they're actually happening, if she actually had conversations with him. And at one point, it looks like that's what happened, because one of the things she caught him in was he lied about his name. She finds out by taking a peek at his driver's license that not only is the name he gave her incorrect, but also where he said he was from and where he was going to is also incorrect. And but then later we learn, when he actually shows her the wallet, after they have a conversation about why don't you trust me, and she's like, oh, because you lied to me, and he's like, no, I didn't. And sure enough, it's the name he gave her at the beginning, the same state he said he was from. His driver's license looked completely different than when she had glanced at it earlier. So she thinks she's all crazy in the head. Now, she wants to escape. She wants to get out of the car. She wants to find a way to just call her boyfriend, say, hey, I made a mistake, come pick me up. But her plans always get thwarted along the way for random encounters with other people. And like I said, her thinking's not right. And she thinks, just because Josh is a liar doesn't make him a killer. And so there's a lot of conflict back and forth. And the author does a really good job of showing us her mental state and how an affliction like this could really help you not make the best decisions. Because, of course, if he is a serial killer, then she's in some deep doo-doo. But if he's not, then she's going to freak out. Everybody's going to think she's even weirder than what she is. And she's going to be accusing a guy of a killer, which she doesn't want to do. And so through all that, she decides to just go along with it until she can know for sure. And that's all I'm going to say about the story, believe it or not. Because this part of the book is where it gets all kinds of interesting, and the part where you just can't put it down, because we meet different characters. There's a diner involved. There's some information that comes to light. There's even one moment where we're looking through Josh's mind and hearing from him and his perspective that makes you think, this guy is definitely a serial killer. She was right all along. This is not going to end well for her and all this. But I just want to say that throughout this book, there are going to be elements added, red herrings involved, twists and turns, as I say, abound, and you are going to be blown away by how it all eventually comes together in the end. Because the things you think when you're reading the book, you think you know what's happening, you think you know what the deal is, and you think, okay, this is going to happen, she has to escape, or we're just going to see how this plays out. The author turns it all around, and you realize that the things you thought are absolutely not true, that it's even worse sometimes than what you originally thought. And at the end, the main bombshell, I'm not going to spoil it, but man, it got me. I got to admit, it got me. I never once suspected that. I never thought that was going to happen. And it blew me away and really made my enjoyment of everything I'd read previously well worth it, because I just wasn't expecting that. I went through this whole book thinking, this is a book about a girl who doesn't know if this guy's a serial killer. He's probably going to wind up being the serial killer, and then she's going to have to escape, and there's going to be a lot of the typical horror stuff. She almost escapes. He catches her at the last minute. Somebody almost intervenes, but then they decide not to, and she's going to be in peril of her life for, trying to get away from this guy. But it just doesn't quite work out like that. And it's, boom, my mind was blown at how it ended. It was a really good read. The author does a really good job of putting the main focus on Charlie and her mental issues, her hallucinations, how she feels about them, how that has affected her in the past. And here's the thing, it's like, some authors will give a background and of their characters, and you'll get to know the characters through them, but it'll be in one big chunk of book. Riley does a really good job of giving us Charlie's past in chunks, in between the action and in between the conversations and in between the is he or isn't he, what's going on here kind of thing. So it's not one, 2, 3, 4 chapters just filled with somebody's backstory. The backstory is revealed over the course of the book. And I really like that. And at the very end, and this is a little touch, and I look for those little touches sometimes. I really appreciated the little touch at the end where the ending of the book didn't quite match what actually happened and what the book was actually about. And when you get there, you'll know what I mean. But it was interesting. It was fascinating. I really liked that little add-on at the end, because the book could have ended without that add-on, and it would have been great. It would have been just fine. But the addition of that really showed that the author cared. He thought about it and gave you another little twisty turn there that you probably weren't expecting. So the book is called Survive the Night, and you definitely need to pick it up. As you know, I don't do star reviews here, but you definitely need to pick it up. It's highly recommended. It's a great page turner. It won't take you long to read, but while you're reading it, you'll be immersed in the story and the action and the whodunits and the twists and the turns. Okay? Definitely buy it. I'll leave a link below to the Amazon copy, but it's available anywhere books are sold, so just get it from your regular place. Whatever you do, don't miss out on reading it. Also down below, there's a link to my Twitter, Horror Reads. If you want to hook up with me on there and talk about some of these things, I'd love to have you as a friend. Be sure to do that. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.